Specifically, did you make Kate cry?
No.
So where did that come from?
What if Kate Middleton has been holding on to secrets this entire time, quietly collecting proof that could unravel Meghan Markle's carefully crafted image?
And she was upset about something, but she owned it and she apologized and she brought me flowers and a note apologizing, and she did what I would do if I knew that I hurt someone, right? To just take accountability for it. What was shocking was...
For years, Kate stayed silent, even as headlines painted her as cold and distant. But now, royal insiders say she may be ready to speak, and what she reveals could change everything. From hidden messages to behind-the-scenes confrontations, is Kate preparing to expose the truth the world wasn't supposed to see? When Meghan Markle first joined the British royal family, the public was told a story of unity, warmth, and acceptance. In early interviews, Meghan described how welcoming everyone had been, especially Kate Middleton and Prince William. She spoke about being embraced by them and described her transition into royal life as smooth and supported. During her first joint interview with Prince Harry, following their engagement in 2017, Meghan appeared upbeat about the experience of becoming part of such a well-known institution. The headlines at the time reflected a positive narrative, a fresh face joining the royal family, someone relatable and modern. However, things began to shift not long after Meghan and Harry's wedding. The story evolved from one of harmony to one of conflict. Over time, public perception started to change, partly driven by a series of subtle but noticeable changes in tone from Meghan and Harry, particularly in interviews and documentaries. Where there had once been admiration and praise, there were now suggestions of tension, especially between Meghan and Kate. Insiders began hinting that Meghan had not found her relationship with Kate to be as friendly as it initially appeared. In fact, several reports began describing Kate as cold and distant. Around this time, the British tabloids picked up on the alleged rift between the two duchesses, with headlines suggesting that there was animosity brewing behind palace doors. But it was hard to know what to believe. Was it media exaggeration, personal miscommunication, or something more? One of the most heavily discussed events that seemed to represent a turning point was the now infamous bridesmaid dress fitting before Harry and Meghan's wedding in May 2018. According to journalist Tom Bauer, tensions were high during this period, especially between Meghan and Kate. It was claimed that Meghan upset Kate by comparing Princess Charlotte unfavorably to another child who was also in the wedding party. There were disagreements over whether the girls should wear tights. Kate, upholding tradition, reportedly insisted on them, while Meghan preferred a more modern look. The situation reportedly escalated, leaving Kate in tears. This was shortly after she had given birth to her third child, Prince Louis, making the emotional toll of the incident even more significant. Tom Bauer and other royal commentators noted that Kate was already exhausted and vulnerable at that point, and the argument over the dresses became the final straw in what had been a stressful period. However, Meghan told a very different version of the story during her and Harry's interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021. In that conversation, Meghan said it was Kate who had made her cry, not the other way around. She claimed Kate had apologized and even brought flowers to make amends, but the damage had already been done. According to Meghan, the story had been deliberately flipped by the media to make her look bad. She called the experience painful and added that having the truth misrepresented in the press made it even worse. This conflicting narrative created even more public confusion. Was one side misremembering, or were there different perceptions of the same event? As with much of royal history, the exact truth remains somewhere behind closed doors. But what it did do was solidify the idea that something had gone wrong between Meghan and Kate, something that was deeply personal and perhaps unresolvable. What followed was a dramatic shift in tone from Meghan and Harry's public appearances and projects. The couple stepped back from their roles as senior royals in early 2020, and the divide between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family became increasingly visible. In interviews, Harry and Meghan began to describe feeling unsupported and isolated. At the same time, subtle references were made to Kate and William that suggested strained relationships behind the scenes. Adding another layer of tension were unconfirmed reports that Kate had been quietly documenting interactions, allegedly collecting evidence, receipts, that could challenge Meghan's version of events. Royal watchers began speculating about what this evidence could include: emails, messages, or private notes exchanged during the more tense moments between the families. While none of this has been made public or officially confirmed, the rumor alone added fuel to the ongoing drama. Some sources close to the royal household have insisted that Kate was deeply hurt by Meghan's public claims. Those familiar with Kate's character have said she found it difficult to see her name associated with being unkind or cold, especially when she had allegedly made an effort to welcome Meghan into the fold. Others argue that Kate, bound by royal protocol and the unwritten rule of never complain, never explain, could not publicly defend herself, making Meghan's version of the story the one that stuck in the public mind. As the media continued to fan the flames, the question of whether Meghan's early praise for the royals had been genuine or strategically positioned began to circulate. Was she genuinely happy at the start, only to become disillusioned later? Or had her praise always been part of a larger plan to shape a particular narrative when things inevitably went wrong? Either way, it's clear that the early image of Meghan as warmly embraced by the royal family, and particularly by Kate, was soon replaced by a much more complex picture. Over time, both women were portrayed as being at the center of a rivalry they may or may not have wanted. And while many of the exact details remain private, the emotional weight of these public and private tensions continues to affect how they are perceived. To this day, there are royal watchers who believe Meghan was misunderstood and unfairly treated by both the media and members of the royal family. Others see Kate as the one who was unfairly dragged into drama and misrepresented in public. What's certain is that the relationship between these two women, both so central to modern royal history, has become one of the most talked about dynamics in recent memory. Whether or not Kate truly holds evidence that could counter Meghan's statements remains to be seen. But just the suggestion that she might, coupled with her continued silence, has kept this narrative alive for years. With Harry and Meghan increasingly vocal in the media and Kate remaining almost entirely silent, the public is left to make sense of two very different stories told in two very different ways. The release of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Netflix documentary was seen by many as a defining moment in the ongoing rift between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. Marketed as an opportunity to share their side of the story, the six-part series quickly became a global talking point. But rather than simply offering clarity, the documentary sparked new waves of controversy, reigniting old tensions and creating new ones, particularly with Kate Middleton. In one of the more widely discussed parts of the documentary, Meghan recalled her first meeting with Kate and William. She described the moment in a way that many found surprising, if not awkward. Meghan said she was wearing ripped jeans and was barefoot when she first met her future in-laws. She then described how she was struck by the formality of the royal family, noting that what she saw in private mirrored the public formality often associated with them. The implication was clear. Meghan felt that what should have been a relaxed, familial interaction was instead cold and distant. That moment set the tone for how the documentary would portray Meghan's early experiences within the royal fold. And while Meghan had previously said in public interviews that Kate had been wonderful and welcoming, this version painted a different picture, one that hinted at distance rather than warmth. Viewers were quick to notice the change. Royal commentators pointed out that Meghan's portrayal of her early days with the royals directly contradicted statements she had made in earlier interviews. Critics argued that Meghan's evolving story made it difficult to distinguish between her genuine experiences and what may have been adjusted to fit the new narrative. For some, it raised the question, was Meghan offering a raw and evolving account? Or was she selectively reshaping the story to fit a broader point about feeling isolated and misunderstood? For Kate Middleton, who has always maintained a quiet public image and rarely engages with the press on personal matters, this portrayal was particularly difficult. As one of the most visible members of the royal family, Kate has consistently adhered to the family's traditional approach: maintain composure, avoid controversy, and stay silent on personal conflicts. Yet in the documentary, she was repeatedly mentioned in ways that made her seem rigid, distant, and unsympathetic. One particularly controversial segment came when Meghan described the curtsy she performed when meeting Queen Elizabeth for the first time. Meghan reenacted the gesture on camera, likening it to something out of a medieval-themed dinner show. She performed an exaggerated bow, laughing at the memory and making it appear theatrical and awkward. While some viewers saw this as a light-hearted moment, others, especially royal supporters, found it disrespectful. Many pointed out that the Queen was still alive at the time of filming, and such a portrayal felt inappropriate given her position and decades of service. Critics also noted that Meghan's comments about not knowing how to curtsy, or even that it was expected, seemed disingenuous. With her background in international relations and experience working in global environments, many questioned how she could have been unaware of such a basic royal protocol. For Kate, who had spent years carefully following tradition and building a respectful relationship with the Queen, this moment was reportedly upsetting. Kate had always shown visible deference to the Queen and had never spoken publicly in a way that might undermine or mock royal customs. According to insiders, Kate was deeply offended by how the curtsy moment was framed and the way Meghan appeared to trivialize something that was considered a sign of respect within the royal household. But perhaps one of the most emotionally loaded elements of the documentary was the comparison made between Meghan and Princess Diana. Throughout the series, Harry repeatedly referenced his mother, drawing parallels between her treatment by the media and Meghan's experiences. He described Meghan as compassionate, empathetic, and misunderstood, traits often associated with Diana. The idea was that history was repeating itself, and Harry saw it as his responsibility to protect his wife in a way he hadn't been able to protect his mother. While the comparison may have been heartfelt, it didn't sit well with everyone. Royal analysts pointed out that the documentary presented Meghan as the sole modern inheritor of Diana's legacy, almost ignoring the fact that William and Kate had also spent years honoring Diana's memory in their own way. Kate, in particular, had made quiet gestures over the years, wearing Diana's iconic sapphire engagement ring, attending memorial events, and naming her daughter Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. These acts, while less publicized, were deeply personal and symbolic. For Kate's supporters, the suggestion that Meghan alone carried Diana's torch felt not only unfair, but erasing. It ignored the quiet dignity with which Kate had navigated her own journey, and it suggested that she somehow lacked the emotional depth or compassion associated with Diana. This portrayal also contributed to a growing perception that the documentary was as much about establishing Meghan's narrative as it was about telling the truth. Adding fuel to the fire were the visual choices made in the series. Several scenes included archive footage that appeared unrelated to Meghan or Harry's specific circumstances, clips of paparazzi frenzies and flashing cameras, often from events involving unrelated celebrities. Critics claimed these images were misleading, designed to amplify the sense of persecution without showing actual coverage of Meghan. This decision raised concerns about authenticity and editorial responsibility. The documentary's release triggered a significant public reaction. On social media, audiences were divided. Some saw it as a brave and necessary act of truth-telling, while others viewed it as one-sided and self-serving. Meghan's portrayal of herself as the victim of an unwelcoming institution and an unsympathetic sister-in-law didn't land well with everyone. Some viewers pointed out that Kate, too, had faced relentless scrutiny during her courtship with Prince William. Back in the early 2000s, Kate had been labeled Weighty Katie by the tabloids, a nickname that mocked her for supposedly waiting too long for William to propose. She was constantly photographed, her family's background analyzed, and her fashion choices criticized. Yet, unlike Meghan, Kate never spoke out publicly about the pressure. Instead, she maintained a reserved and consistent public image, often described as composed and graceful under pressure. For many, this comparison created an uncomfortable contrast. Meghan's openness about her struggles was seen by some as courageous, but by others as overly dramatic or strategic. Meanwhile, Kate's silence was praised as dignified by some and seen as passive by others. Either way, their differences became a central part of the story. By the end of the documentary, the message from Meghan and Harry was clear. They felt they had no choice but to step away from royal life. The institution, they claimed, was rigid and unresponsive to their needs, and the media had been allowed to run wild with negative stories, some of which they suggested came from inside the palace itself. They portrayed themselves as emotionally battered, isolated, and left without proper support. In response, there was no official comment from the palace. Kate, in particular, said nothing. But the silence only heightened speculation that she might eventually respond, if not through an interview, then perhaps through a more subtle method. Rumors began circulating that Kate had kept personal documentation, messages, emails, or notes, that could shed light on what had really happened. While unconfirmed, the idea that Kate was sitting on evidence became a powerful narrative in itself. Whether such receipts exist or not, the fact that the public is even asking says a lot about the current state of the royal discourse. There's a hunger for resolution, for clarity, and for understanding. And yet, as long as one side tells their story and the other remains silent, the divide between public opinion will likely continue to grow. In the beginning, though, there was hope. One early photo that stood out was taken at Sandringham, just before Queen Elizabeth's traditional Christmas Day church service. Meghan, newly engaged to Prince Harry at the time, was seen walking alongside Kate and the rest of the family. Their heads were bowed, preparing to curtsy as the Queen arrived. At the time, the moment was seen as symbolic. There was genuine optimism in the air. The public was excited about Meghan joining the family, and the visual closeness of the group suggested a positive future. Meghan wore a camel-colored coat and a hat that attracted some lighthearted teasing from the press, but overall the mood seemed upbeat and united. Shortly after, the royals made what would become a rare joint appearance that sparked huge public interest. Meghan and Harry, alongside Kate and William, attended a Royal Foundation event. The media quickly dubbed them the Fab Four. It was the first time the four of them were seen speaking together on stage. For the royal family, where most engagements are done solo or in pairs, this moment felt like a turning point, a sign of modernization and youthful energy. However, watching the footage more closely, not everyone looked comfortable. Meghan appeared enthusiastic, smiling confidently, and speaking about issues like gender equality and women's rights. Kate, heavily pregnant with Prince Louis at the time, smiled politely but spoke less. William and Harry, on either end of the row, seemed unusually tense, with stiff body language and serious expressions. Meghan's energy stood out. Some viewed it as refreshing, while others sensed that she might be overshadowing her future in-laws. During that event, Meghan also made a bold reference to the Me Too and Time's Up movements, issues that are widely supported, but that also carry political overtones. The royal family typically avoids taking public stances on controversial or political topics in order to maintain neutrality. Meghan's remarks were praised by some, but they also reportedly caused discomfort within palace circles. As William later said during the same event, "The task for us would not be to reinvent the wheel," which many interpreted as a subtle pushback against Meghan's more outspoken style. According to Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, even small personal interactions behind the scenes hinted at tensions between Kate and Meghan. One example he shared was a moment when Meghan asked to borrow Kate's lip gloss before going on stage. According to Harry, Kate was visibly surprised but handed it over. Meghan squeezed some out and used it, but Kate reportedly grimaced. Harry suggested it was just a clash of styles, one more casual, one more reserved. But in the media, this small moment was seen as symbolic of a growing rift. From there, things appeared to deteriorate further. During Harry and Meghan's wedding, tensions reportedly peaked. Kate, having recently given birth to Prince Louis, was seen at the ceremony looking visibly uncomfortable. Photos from the day show her with a serious expression, walking alone with Princess Charlotte. According to journalist Tom Bauer, there had been arguments in the days leading up to the wedding, most notably over the bridesmaid dresses. Meghan is said to have wanted a more modern look for the children, while Kate preferred they follow tradition. Other reports suggested that Meghan's comments about Kate's baby brain led to an emotional response, with Kate saying they weren't close enough for that kind of remark. Though Meghan claimed in her Oprah interview that Kate made her cry and later apologized with flowers, others close to the family have insisted the situation was the reverse. What's clear is that by the time of the wedding, any early sense of harmony had begun to fade. After the wedding, Meghan was seen with Kate at several key events, including Trooping the Color. In one of the most analyzed images from that day, Meghan is seen standing slightly behind Kate on the palace balcony. Meghan looks somewhat uneasy, while Kate's expression appears tense. Observers suggested that Meghan may have felt sidelined or secondary, and that the reality of her royal role, supporting rather than leading, was becoming apparent. Despite this, Kate appeared to extend an olive branch by inviting Meghan to attend Wimbledon together. Given that Kate is a longtime tennis fan and patron of the All England Club, the invitation seemed like a genuine attempt at bonding. However, photos from the day told a different story. While both women smiled for the cameras, their body language looked strained. Kate, usually animated at tennis matches, seemed stiff and reserved. Meghan smiled, but many noted it looked forced. According to royal biographer Tom Bower, the physical contrast between the two women only highlighted the tension. While Meghan had often been praised for her charisma, being next to Kate, the future queen, created an obvious comparison that the press eagerly analyzed. The following summer, Meghan joined Kate again at Wimbledon, this time with Kate's sister Pippa in tow. Some speculated that Pippa's presence acted as a buffer. While the event was framed publicly as a friendly outing, the expressions on all three women's faces told a more complex story. Kate clutched her handbag tightly, her posture rigid. Meghan again smiled for the cameras, but the sense of genuine ease just wasn't there. Photos taken at a charity polo match in July 2019 may have been the most revealing. Meghan, holding baby Archie, and Kate, watching her own children, were seen in the same frame, but completely disconnected. Throughout the event, there was no interaction between the two women. Meghan appeared to use Archie as a sort of barrier, holding him close and not engaging. Kate remained focused on her children. Despite being at a casual private event where cameras were less intrusive, the two women didn't share a single moment of eye contact or conversation. For many, this confirmed what had been suspected for months. Their relationship was cordial at best, but distant and uncomfortable in reality. This was echoed in the book Finding Freedom, which took a more sympathetic view of Harry and Meghan. The authors wrote that the two duchesses had developed a cordial but distant relationship. But even that description now seems generous, given the photographic evidence and lack of interaction between them at key events. One final attempt at a public reconciliation appeared to take place during the Commonwealth Day service in 2019. At the start of the event, Meghan and Kate were seen exchanging a cheek kiss. Kate kissed Meghan on both cheeks, while Meghan reached around her with one arm. It was meant to appear friendly, but the body language again suggested awkwardness rather than warmth. Sources later said that Kate had wanted to put an end to feud rumors, especially since this was one of the final public appearances before the royal household officially split into two separate offices. Yet despite this gesture, it was clear that any chance at a deeper connection had likely passed. Meghan and Harry would soon move abroad, and Kate would continue her work within the royal family, increasingly taking on a leadership role. The physical and emotional distance between the two couples had become almost impossible to ignore. By 2020, the divide between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family was no longer just a matter of public speculation. It had become a visible, almost physical reality, captured during their final official royal engagements. The most telling of these moments came during the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, an event deeply valued by Queen Elizabeth. In the past, it had been a moment for unity, a symbolic coming together of the family in public. But in March 2020, it became the setting for one of the most awkward and emotionally charged appearances of the modern royal era. This was Harry and Meghan's final engagement as working royals. It was also the first time they had seen Kate and William since announcing their decision to step down. The atmosphere was tense. Unlike previous years, Harry and Meghan were not included in the Queen's procession. Reportedly, the couple learned their exclusion had already been printed in the official order of service before they were informed. As a show of compromise, William and Kate also agreed not to walk in the procession, but the damage had been done. According to biographer Robert Lacey, Harry was furious and saw the decision as a public snub, a final reminder of his diminished role. Inside the Abbey, seating arrangements reinforced the sense of separation. Harry and Meghan sat one row behind William and Kate. Between the couples sat Prince Edward and his wife Sophie, creating a visible buffer. Photos and footage from the event show minimal interaction, just a brief greeting, little eye contact, and an absence of the warmth or familiarity once hoped for. Meghan, her jaw tight, appeared composed but visibly strained. Harry glanced at her frequently, clearly aware of the pressure she was under. What struck many observers was how the royal family's usual ability to mask discomfort with smiles and small talk seemed to have failed. Everyone looked tense. The effort to maintain appearances had given way to raw emotion. Even though the royals are trained in public performance on this occasion, the fractures ran too deep to hide. According to reports published later, Kate found this particular engagement almost unbearable. In Robert Jobson's book, Our King, he writes that Kate later described it to a senior royal as one of the hardest things she had ever had to do. Meghan also reportedly found the occasion deeply uncomfortable. What had once been seen as a moment to show unity instead exposed just how far apart the couples had grown. The months that followed did little to repair the damage. Meghan and Harry relocated permanently to California, and their public work took a very different tone. While the royal family maintained their traditional silence, the Sussexes used interviews, podcasts, and documentaries to share their experiences and frustrations. Every new revelation brought renewed public debate and fresh scrutiny of Kate and William, who continued to stay quiet in the face of criticism. The next time the couples were seen at the same public event was more than 2 years later. Queen Elizabeth had died, and the royal family gathered to pay tribute to the monarch who had served as their matriarch and symbol of continuity for decades. In the days following her death, the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, appeared together for a public walkabout in Windsor. It was a rare joint appearance, and many royal watchers saw it as a potential sign of reconciliation. The couples arrived together and walked side by side, greeting mourners and accepting flowers. On the surface, it looked like a unified front, but upon closer observation, the atmosphere was again uncomfortable. Meghan stood apart from Kate, who kept close to her children and avoided unnecessary interaction. William exchanged a few brief words with Harry, but the women remained distant. Given that the brothers had once been inseparable, the shift was jarring. A body language expert at the time noted that the couples split into 2 separate orbits, despite being only steps apart. According to Jobson, the moment was difficult for everyone involved, especially for Kate. The event was described as highly emotional, not just because of the Queen's passing, but because of the personal tension between the couples. Kate reportedly told a confidant afterwards that the walkabout was extremely difficult, requiring her to dig deep emotionally. She was said to have gone through with it out of duty to the late Queen, rather than out of any personal desire to reconnect. This moment at Windsor was followed by another shared appearance, this time at the Queen's funeral. While decorum and tradition required the entire royal family to attend and behave appropriately, photos from the day revealed subtle but telling dynamics. Kate and Meghan were not seated next to each other. Camilla, now Queen Consort, was placed between them. During the service, Kate stayed composed and stoic, as she has so often done in public settings. Meghan, too, maintained a reserved posture, but the absence of even a glance between them told the real story. These 2 women, once portrayed as allies, then rivals, now seemed like strangers brought together only by circumstance. By this point, any hope for reconciliation appeared dim, and the situation only worsened after the release of Harry's memoir Spare in January 2023. In Spare, Harry gave readers an unfiltered look at his life in the royal family, including personal moments involving Kate and Meghan. He described the now well-known incident about Meghan allegedly telling Kate she had baby brain in the lead-up to their wedding. According to Harry, Kate took offense and said that they weren't close enough for such comments. The story, already referenced in earlier media coverage, resurfaced with even greater clarity. Harry's version of events suggested that Meghan was trying to be friendly and casual, while Kate interpreted it as inappropriate. He also recounted how Kate had become visibly upset after Meghan borrowed her lip gloss without asking. While the incident may seem trivial, Harry included it as part of a broader picture, one where cultural differences and personality clashes contributed to escalating tensions. But critics questioned whether it was necessary to include such personal stories, especially given the family's preference for privacy. Many felt the book was more damaging than revealing, particularly in the way it portrayed Kate. Kate, once again, did not respond publicly. She maintained her silence, as she has done throughout the entire saga. But her quiet dignity hasn't stopped the rumors. Some insiders have suggested that she may one day choose to break her silence, not with a public interview, but perhaps through a more measured response. Reports have surfaced claiming that Kate has kept records, texts, emails, even calendar notes that could provide her side of the story if the time ever comes. So far, though, she has chosen to remain silent, reportedly at the urging of Prince William, who is said to be determined to uphold the royal family's long-standing policy: never complain, never explain. But as the narrative continues to be shaped by interviews, documentaries, and books from Meghan and Harry, many wonder how long that silence can last. For Kate, the choice to speak, or not to, could define her public role as she eventually steps into the position of Queen Consort. What makes this situation so complex is that both women appear to have genuinely felt hurt. Meghan has openly described her pain and the emotional toll of royal life. Kate, on the other hand, has been portrayed as the calm, reliable figure who holds the royal family together behind the scenes. Whether either of them intended to become rivals is debatable, but circumstances, personalities, and very public life choices have brought them into conflict in a way that neither likely anticipated. Today, the relationship between Kate and Meghan remains frozen in time. There have been no joint appearances since the Queen's funeral, no updates from palace sources, no signs of thaw. Public opinion remains sharply divided, with Team Meghan and Team Kate dominating online spaces. And for many royal watchers, the story of their fractured relationship has come to symbolize the wider challenges facing the modern monarchy. At the heart of it all, it's a very human story, about two women from vastly different backgrounds, brought together by marriage and separated by a whirlwind of duty, tradition, culture, and emotion. Whether the rift can ever truly be healed remains unknown. But the consequences of their fallout continue to ripple through the royal family, reshaping how the world sees not just Kate and Meghan, but the monarchy itself.